The first time my ex-husband saw me after the court's decision, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He stood in the hallway outside the family courtroom, still wearing the expensive navy suit he'd always believed made people respect him. It didn't. Not anymore. His attorney quietly handed him a folder. He opened it, read the first page, then looked up at me with a face I'd never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Emma, he whispered. Please, tell me you didn't know about this. I didn't answer, because I did know. I'd known for almost 6 months. I just hadn't been the one to expose it. The judge walked past us without saying a word. Reporters were already gathering outside. The story would be public before sunset. My ex-husband glanced toward the courthouse entrance, where television cameras were beginning to line the sidewalk. No, he muttered under his breath. If they find out, I couldn't stop myself from asking. If? Who finds out? He closed his eyes. My partners. There it was. Even now. Even after losing nearly everything that truly mattered. His first thought wasn't about our daughter. It wasn't about me. It wasn't even about the marriage he'd destroyed. It was still his reputation. Looking back now, I should have recognized that flaw years before we ever said, I do. But love has a strange way of convincing you that someone's priorities will change once they build a family. I believed becoming a husband would make him braver. I believed becoming a father would make him more honest. I was wrong, because the lie that destroyed our marriage wasn't something he told once. It became the foundation of the life we built together. For years, I protected him. I defended him. I believed every explanation he gave me. Until the day he asked me to do something I never imagined a husband could ask of his wife. He looked me straight in the eyes and asked me to become the villain in our own story. At the time, I thought saying yes would save our family. I had no idea it would cost him the one thing he believed no one could ever take away. And the truth that finally came out was far worse than either of us could have imagined. People always ask me why I didn't see the warning signs. The honest answer? Because they didn't look like warning signs at first. They looked like ambition, confidence, charm. When I met Daniel, I was 26 years old and working as a pediatric nurse at a hospital outside Chicago. My days were long. My scrubs were usually covered in finger paint, stickers, or the occasional splash of apple juice from frightened little patients. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved every second of it. Helping children reminded me every day that kindness mattered, that people deserved someone who would stay beside them when they were scared. Daniel was the opposite of me. He was polished, always wearing tailored suits, always carrying 2 phones. He worked for a prestigious public relations firm that specialized in helping large companies manage their public image. The first thing he ever said to me was after I accidentally spilled coffee on his jacket in a cafe. I apologized 3 times before he smiled. It's just coffee, he laughed. If this is the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm doing pretty well. That made me laugh. By the end of the week, we'd gone on our first date. By the end of the year, we were engaged. My mother adored him. He's so successful, she'd whisper after family dinners. And he looks at you like you're the only woman in the room. Back then, I believed she was right. He did make me feel special. He never forgot birthdays. He sent flowers to my hospital on difficult shifts. When I worked overnight, he'd leave little handwritten notes inside the refrigerator. Don't forget to eat. I'm proud of you. Love you more today than yesterday. I kept every one of those notes in a small wooden box. Sometimes I wonder if he meant those words when he wrote them, or if he simply knew exactly what people wanted to hear. Looking back, I should have recognized the first real warning only a few months after our wedding. Daniel had just been promoted to senior account director. His company hosted a celebration dinner at an upscale hotel downtown. Everyone congratulated him. Everyone admired him. On the drive home, he was unusually quiet. Everything okay? I asked. He kept his eyes on the road. I made one small mistake during the presentation. I frowned. No one seemed to notice. I noticed. It doesn't matter. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. It does. People remember mistakes. That sentence stayed with me, not because it sounded strange, because it sounded rehearsed. Over the next few years, I noticed a pattern. Whenever something embarrassing happened, Daniel didn't ask how to fix the problem. He asked how to keep people from finding out. If a client complained, can we contain this? If a project failed, who else knows? If someone at work made an error, will this affect the firm's image? At first, I thought that was simply part of working in public relations. Image was literally his job. I never imagined he'd eventually treat our marriage the same way. 3 years after our wedding, our daughter, Lily, was born. Holding her for the first time changed me forever. She had Daniel's green eyes, my smile, tiny fingers that wrapped around mine with impossible strength. Daniel cried when he held her. "I'll spend the rest of my life protecting her," he whispered. I believed him. He really was a wonderful father in those early years. He built blanket forts in the living room, read bedtime stories using silly voices, never missed dance recitals. He even rearranged business trips so he could attend preschool performances. Watching him with Lily made me believe we'd beaten the odds, that we'd become one of those families who could survive anything. Our house wasn't extravagant, just a comfortable 2-story home with a swing in the backyard and a kitchen that somehow became everyone's favorite place to gather. Sunday mornings meant pancakes. Friday nights meant movies on the couch. Life felt ordinary, and ordinary felt perfect. Then, during Lily's 8th birthday party, I noticed something I couldn't explain. Daniel kept checking his phone every few minutes. He smiled for every photograph, laughed with every guest, but the moment people weren't looking, his expression changed completely, like someone carrying a weight he couldn't put down. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I asked him what was wrong. He hesitated longer than usual. Then he looked at me and quietly said, "Emma, I need to tell you something." I reached for his hand. "You can tell me anything." I truly believed that. I had no idea those 5 words were about to change every part of our lives. Daniel didn't speak right away. He stood at the kitchen island, slowly turning his wedding ring around his finger. It was something he always did when he was nervous. "I made a mistake," he finally said. My heart skipped. "What kind of mistake?" He looked at the floor. At work, I let out a quiet breath. For one brief moment, I thought he was about to tell me he'd been unfaithful. Instead, he pulled a thick manila folder from his briefcase. "I need your help." I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, internal emails, and several newspaper mock-ups with headlines that hadn't been published yet. I frowned. "I don't understand." "Our biggest client is being investigated." "For what?" He hesitated. "Product safety." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" He rubbed his forehead. "There were reports that one of their children's products wasn't properly tested." Children. That single word caught my attention immediately. As a pediatric nurse, I couldn't ignore it. "Were any kids hurt?" He looked away. "A few." "A few?" "Nothing fatal." "Nothing fatal." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "As long as no child died, we still have a chance to manage the situation." Manage the situation. Not fix it. Not tell the truth. Manage it. I stared at him. "What exactly is your job in all of this?" "My firm handles crisis communications." "And?" "We're trying to prevent public panic." I slowly closed the folder. "I don't like the sound of that." He sat beside me. "Emma, I need you to trust me." "I do trust you." "Then listen." He took both of my hands. "The investigation is expanding. My name is on several internal approvals." I frowned. "But you didn't design the product." "No." "You didn't manufacture it." "No." "So why are you involved?" "Because I signed off on the public safety statements." I froze. "What?" "I relied on information they gave me." "You signed documents saying the product was safe?" "Yes." "Without verifying them?" His silence answered for him. The room suddenly felt smaller. "Daniel, what if those documents were false? They weren't supposed to be." "That's not what I asked." He stood up. "They told us everything had been tested. And now?" He looked at me with exhausted eyes. "Now everyone is blaming everyone else." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question that mattered most. "What happens next?" He inhaled slowly. "If this goes public, my career is over." I reached for his arm. "We'll get through it." He smiled sadly. "I knew you'd say that." Then his expression changed. "I just need one more thing." "What?" "You'll probably get a phone call." "A phone call from who?" "The investigators." I frowned. "Why would they call me?" "Because they know we're married." Okay. If they ask, tell them I've been under enormous stress. I have. Tell them I've been emotionally overwhelmed. You have been. He nodded. And if they ask whether I brought work home, I'll tell them you sometimes did. He looked relieved. Good. I still didn't understand where the conversation was going. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. And if they ask whether some of those approval documents were completed while I was at home, tell them you helped organize my paperwork. I stared at him. What? It's just administrative work. No. You know how my office works. Emma. It'll make the timeline less confusing. I slowly pulled my hands away. Daniel, what exactly are you asking me to do? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the window. The investigators believe someone outside the company may have accessed confidential files. So, if they think some documents were handled at home, they'll stop looking inside the office. The realization hit me all at once. You want them to think I had access? He remained silent. You want them to believe I might have been involved? No, not involved. Just connected. I stood up so quickly my chair slid across the kitchen floor. Connected? You want me to place myself inside a criminal investigation? It won't go that far. You don't know that. He finally turned around. For the first time since we'd met, the charming, patient man I loved was gone. In his place stood someone I barely recognized. If my reputation is destroyed, everything we've built disappears. Our house, Lily's future, our savings, our life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So your solution is to risk mine? He stepped closer. I'm trying to protect our family. No, I whispered. You're trying to protect yourself. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've spent your entire career protecting other people's reputations. I felt tears forming. And now you're asking me to sacrifice mine. He didn't deny it. He simply said, I'm asking you to trust me. Looking back now, I wish that had been the worst thing he ever asked of me. But I was wrong. Because the next morning, his law firm called. And they wanted something far worse than my trust. They wanted my silence. Daniel moved into a downtown apartment 3 weeks later. On paper, it was a temporary separation. In reality, neither of us knew if our marriage would survive. Lily asked about him every night. Is Daddy coming home for dinner? Not tonight, sweetheart. Tomorrow? I don't know. She'd nod, pretending to understand. Then she'd quietly carry her stuffed rabbit back to her room. Children have a heartbreaking way of accepting things they should never have to. I kept working at the hospital. My patients still needed medicine. Parents still needed reassurance. Babies still entered the world every day, completely unaware of how complicated adults could make life. Oddly enough, work became the safest place I had. No one there cared about television reports or corporate scandals. To my coworkers, I was still Emma. Still the nurse who stayed late when another shift was overwhelmed. Still the woman who brought homemade cookies on Christmas Eve because half the staff had to miss dinner with their families. Life became simple. Wake up. Get Lily ready for school. Work 12-hour shifts. Help with homework. Read bedtime stories. Repeat. There were nights I cried after Lily fell asleep. Not because I missed the expensive house. Not because I missed the vacations. Because I missed the man I thought I had married. Looking back now, I realize I spent months grieving someone who had never truly existed. The charming husband. The devoted partner. The man who always said, we'll face everything together. That version of Daniel disappeared the moment the truth threatened his image. But I didn't disappear. Slowly, without even noticing, I started rebuilding. A senior physician at the hospital, Dr. Elaine Foster, noticed I was taking extra continuing education classes. Planning to specialize? She asked one afternoon. I smiled. I've been thinking about pediatric patient advocacy. She nodded approvingly. We need more people willing to speak up. Speak up. Those 2 words stayed with me. For years, I'd done the opposite. I'd stayed quiet. I'd protected other people. I'd convinced myself silence was another form of love. I would never make that mistake again. A few months later, I accepted a position with the hospital's Patient Safety and Family Advocacy Department. The salary wasn't much higher, but the work mattered. Instead of only treating children after something went wrong, I helped families navigate investigations, medical reviews, and safety concerns. Ironically, my greatest pain had prepared me for my new purpose. I understood what it felt like when powerful people cared more about protecting institutions than protecting families, and I refused to let other parents feel as powerless as I once had. Around the same time, I met attorney Rachel Morgan during a hospital ethics conference. She specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. After hearing a small part of my story, she looked at me thoughtfully. You know, people who spend years protecting a lie usually leave a trail. I frowned. What do you mean? Emails. Internal message. Deleted files. Someone always keeps something. I laughed softly. That sounds optimistic. She smiled. No, it sounds like experience. Before we left, she handed me her business card. If you ever decide you want the whole truth, call me. I tucked the card into my purse without thinking much about it. I still believed the investigation was almost over. I still believed Daniel had simply made terrible choices under pressure. I thought the biggest secret had already been revealed. I was wrong. 3 months later, Rachel called me herself. Her voice was unusually serious. Emma, I think we found someone who's finally willing to talk. My heart began racing. Who? There was a long pause. Then she quietly answered, the person who started all of this. In that instant, I realized something I had never considered before. Maybe Daniel hadn't been protecting a mistake. Maybe he had been protecting someone. Rachel refused to tell me anything over the phone. Not until you're sitting across from me, she said. Her tone made my stomach tighten. The next morning, I met her at her office. She closed the door, set a digital recorder on the conference table, and slid a thick file toward me. I need you to prepare yourself. For what? The truth. I almost laughed. I thought I already knew the truth. She looked at me sadly. No, you only know what your husband wanted you to believe. Those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Rachel opened the file. A former employee from Daniel's firm contacted us 3 weeks ago. Why now? Because he was fired. For what? He refused to destroy evidence. I felt my pulse quicken. He kept copies. Rachel nodded. Emails. Internal message. Meeting notes. Everything. She pressed the play button on the recorder. A man's voice filled the room. I worked in compliance for 6 years. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that Daniel Carter wasn't the one making the decisions. I frowned. What does that mean? Rachel paused the recording. It means someone higher up ordered the cover-up. For a second, I actually felt relieved. Maybe Daniel had been trapped. Maybe he'd been threatened. Maybe. But Rachel continued quietly. He had a choice. The relief disappeared just as quickly as it had come. She handed me a printed email. The subject line read, Media strategy, internal use only. I began reading. We cannot allow this story to reach the national media. Any admission of prior knowledge will permanently damage the firm's reputation. If necessary, distance key executives from the approval process. My eyes moved farther down the page. Then I saw Daniel's reply. Understood. I'll make sure everything points away from the firm. My hands started shaking. Rachel waited. There are more. I kept reading. Dozens of emails. Planning sessions. Draft statements. Media strategies. Not one of them talked about helping the injured children. Not one asked how to prevent another accident. Every message asked the same question in different ways. How do we protect the company's image? I looked up. So he knew. Rachel nodded. Long before he came home that night. I closed my eyes. The conversation in our kitchen suddenly replayed in my head. I made a mistake. No. He hadn't made a mistake. He had made a decision. A decision to protect his career instead of innocent families. But Rachel wasn't finished. The second part is even harder. I looked at her. What second part? She pulled out another document. This one wasn't from Daniel's company. It was from family court. I frowned. What does this have to do with anything? Read page 4. My eyes found the highlighted paragraph. Then everything around me seemed to disappear. Daniel had secretly instructed his attorney to begin preparing for a future custody dispute, 6 months before he ever asked for the separation. I stared at the page. No, Rachel spoke softly. He expected the scandal to become public, so he started building a legal strategy. I kept reading. There were private notes. Recommendations? Character assessments. Then I saw my name. If Emma refuses to cooperate, emphasize her emotional instability caused by workplace stress. Present Daniel as the more stable parent if custody becomes contested. I couldn't breathe. Emotional instability? I had spent 12 years supporting him, protecting him, defending him, and while I believed we were fighting to save our marriage, he had been quietly preparing to convince a judge that I wasn't fit to raise our daughter. Tears rolled down my face, not because I still loved him, because I finally understood something I'd refused to accept. He hadn't chosen his reputation over me only once. He had chosen it. Every single time. Rachel reached across the table and gently closed the file. Emma, there's one last thing. What? The whistleblower agreed to testify. I looked at her through blurred eyes. And several parents whose children were injured are filing a civil lawsuit. She paused before adding, they've asked if you're willing to testify about everything Daniel asked you to do. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. 11 months earlier, I had been willing to lie to save my husband's reputation. Now, the truth was asking me to save families I had never even met. This time, my answer came without hesitation. Yes, because for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't protecting a marriage. I was protecting the truth. And Daniel was about to learn that the reputation he'd sacrificed everything to preserve was the very thing he was about to lose forever. The courthouse was strangely quiet the morning I testified. No television cameras in sight. No dramatic speeches. Just a courtroom full of ordinary people whose lives had been changed by one extraordinary lie. Several parents sat in the front row. One mother held the hand of her little boy, whose left arm still carried scars from the defective product. I couldn't stop looking at him. That child had become real to me. Not a statistic. Not a headline. A child. The kind of child I had spent my career trying to protect. When my name was called, I walked to the witness stand. Daniel never looked at me. He kept his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. His attorneys asked only a few basic questions. Then the plaintiff's attorney stood. Mrs. Carter, did your husband ever ask you to make a false statement regarding this investigation? Yes. The courtroom fell silent. What exactly did he ask you to do? I told the truth. Everything. The late-night conversations. The documents. The pressure. The request to claim I had handled files I had never touched. The suggestion that our separation would protect the family. No exaggeration. No revenge. Just the truth. When I finished, the attorney thanked me and sat down. Daniel's lawyer rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Carter, are you testifying today because you're angry your marriage ended? No. Are you seeking revenge? No. Then why are you here? I looked directly at the jury before answering. Because children deserved honesty long before adults deserved a public relations strategy. For the first time all morning, Daniel looked up. Our eyes met. I didn't see anger. I didn't even see resentment. I saw something much sadder. Regret. Not regret for what he'd done to me. Regret that his choices had finally caught up with him. The trial lasted another 3 weeks. When the verdict was announced, the courtroom remained completely silent. The jury found the corporation liable for knowingly misleading the public. Several executives faced additional investigations. Daniel wasn't sent to prison. He hadn't designed the dangerous product. He hadn't manufactured it. But the court ruled that he had knowingly participated in concealing critical safety information. His professional license was suspended. His public relations certification was revoked. The firm that had once praised his leadership quietly removed his biography from its website. The partners he'd spent years trying to impress released a short public statement. Mr. Carter no longer represents the values of our organization. One sentence. That was all it took. The reputation he'd sacrificed his marriage for disappeared in less than 20 words. 3 months later, family court issued its final custody decision. The judge reviewed every piece of evidence, not only the testimony from the corporate case, but also the private legal notes Daniel had prepared months before our separation. The judge looked directly at him. Mr. Carter, this court is deeply troubled that you attempted to create a false narrative regarding the mother's fitness before any custody dispute even existed. Daniel lowered his head. The judge continued. Your willingness to manipulate both professional and personal truth raises serious concerns regarding your judgment. Primary custody of Lily was awarded to me. Daniel received supervised visitation until he completed counseling and met additional court requirements. He didn't argue. He didn't appeal. He simply nodded. After the hearing, he caught up with me in the courthouse hallway. Emma, I stopped walking. I never meant for it to go this far. I looked at him quietly. That's the problem, Daniel. You never meant to tell the truth either. He wiped at his eyes. I thought I was protecting our future. No, I said gently. You were protecting the version of yourself you wanted the world to believe. For the first time since I'd known him. He didn't have an answer. He just stood there in silence while Lily reached for my hand. As we walked toward the courthouse doors, she squeezed my fingers and whispered, Mom, can we go home now? I smiled through tears. Yes, sweetheart. We're finally going home. Not to the biggest house. Not to the perfect life. But to a home built on something far stronger than appearances. The truth. People sometimes ask me if I hate Daniel. The answer surprises them. I don't. Hatred is exhausting. I carried enough pain for one lifetime. I wasn't willing to carry hatred, too. That doesn't mean what he did no longer matters. It does. Some choices leave scars that never completely disappear. Lily is older now. She's old enough to ask difficult questions about why her father doesn't live with us anymore. I've never spoken badly about him. One day she will learn the full story. When that day comes, I don't want her to remember a mother driven by bitterness. I want her to remember a mother who chose honesty, even when honesty hurt. Looking back, I realize my marriage didn't end because one secret came to light. It ended years earlier, the moment my husband decided that protecting his image was more important than protecting the people who loved him. Reputation can be rebuilt. Careers can recover. Money can be earned again. Trust is different. Once someone asks you to betray your own values for their benefit, the relationship changes forever. If there's one lesson my journey taught me, it's this. Never confuse loyalty with silence. The people who truly love you will never ask you to lie so they can look better. And the truth may take time, but it has a remarkable way of finding those who spend their lives running from it. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Now I'd really like to hear from you. If you had been in Emma's position, would you have protected your husband's reputation? Or would you have told the truth from the very beginning, even if it meant losing your marriage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story is different, and your perspective may help someone who's struggling with a similar situation right now. If you enjoy emotional family drama, revenge stories, and true-to-life storytelling about betrayal, hidden secrets, and finding the courage to rebuild after everything falls apart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We share new stories every week, stories that remind us that integrity is worth more than appearances, and that the truth, no matter how long it takes, has a way of changing lives. Until next time, take care of yourself, stand by your values, and never let someone else's reputation become more important than your own conscience.